All set? All set? All right, we're gonna get started here a little bit early to hopefully get everybody home. Hopefully beat the weather, no delayed flights and driving wherever we have to get to. My name's Tom Moyer. I work with StructureCare, an engineer restoration firm dedicated to parking garages. We're starting to branch out into different concrete structures right now. I work with the business development side of things for them. Also, the board member with the New York State Parking Association as well. Today we're going to be talking specifically, or not just specifically, about the New York City parking structure inspection law. We're also going to talk about some preventative maintenance because I know we're in Buffalo and we're going to talk about New York City. I know it pertains to some people, but the nice thing is these laws are really popping up more and more. It happened in New York State back in 2018. Now we're seeing it in New York City starting this year and into next year. New Jersey and Pennsylvania are very close behind as well. So this is something that's relevant to New York City right now, but it's something that I think we're going to start to see a lot more of. So at StructureCare, every time we have a meeting that has, I think it's 3 or 4 or 5 or more people, we always like to have a safety tip, a safety moment of the day. Typically, we're talking about construction or something on the site, so we wanted to try to make it something to everybody in this room. So we wanted to take it to signage specifically around fire extinguishers with our safety first culture at StructureCare. Just like the inspection we're going to talk about the parking structure, and I'm sure many of you know this, with fire extinguishers, there's a maintenance schedule to them of the inspection as well. For external, every 12 months, and internal, 1 to 6 years is when that inspection has to happen. I won't go through all that. You guys probably might know a little bit more about that than even myself, but we always like to start our meetings off with a safety tip. And just like our garages, just like our lots, just like our gates, all of our systems, all of these things need to be inspected because hopefully we never need to use these, but the chance that we do have to need to use them, we want to make sure that they're safe. So now back more with parking garages. Safety first again. So hopefully nobody is seeing these images in your garage. Unfortunately, you're probably seeing these images in your parking garage. A lot of people do. What we want to try to do at StructureCare, any other engineer firm working with the New York City law, ultimately we want to avoid this down here. And this is really why these laws are popping up, because we're finding out that wow, a garage collapsed. It's a big concrete steel structure. It should have lasted forever. It didn't. Why didn't it? Well, we don't know because there wasn't an inspection for 20 years. We have no idea. And then we're spending even more money to go in and do forensic testing now after the fact to try to figure out what happened versus maybe that $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 inspection that we didn't want to do right now beats that. So from today, we want to take a few things away. And we tried to do the who, what, where, when, why to kind of talk about the law, not just saying here's a law, here's what it says, and going from there. Really why it's important, who it's affecting, how it affects them, because unlike the New York State parking law, the New York City has a lot more, what I'll say, teeth. There's a lot more enforcement behind it, a lot more education behind the city. The city is mandating this. They are going out. They are the ones that are going to enforce this. So this is going to directly impact a lot more people than the New York State law ever did. And we're actually starting to see now smaller cities in New York State, since the adoption of the city's law, they're starting to have a little bit more teeth. They're starting to inspect their structures because ultimately they don't want that collapse to happen as well. So first, what? What is the New York City inspection law? As we said, it really mimics the 2018 New York State inspection law. What it is, an engineer needs to come out on site to do a full inspection of the garage, but not just any engineer. It is a QPSI, a qualified, and it's on the next slide here. I'll get to that. I don't want to miss anything, but one of the QPSIs, they have to go through a stringent interview background with the actual city, so the city is the one who's qualifying inspectors. We have one from our company. I know a bunch of the engineer firms have some as well. So already they're putting more teeth behind it. They're making sure that the upfront work is starting. So like the state law, the New York City parking inspection law requires parking structures to be inspected by a certified inspector on a prescribed cyclical basis. And when your inspections due is all based off of your age, kind of like the state law as well. So difference between this law and the state law, the owner does not file the report. Whoever is doing the actual inspection, when you are hiring that inspection company with the QPSI, they are the ones that are handling the submission of the report. So it's completely different than how it was handled with the state. The reason for this is because when the engineer is submitting a report, they're submitting it with, there might be a few more, but mainly 3 findings: safe, unsafe with concerns over the next few years, and unsafe with conditions that have to be remedied immediately. And the inspector is not going out there and doing a one-time inspection and saying, we're done, here it is. That's the difference between the QPSI. They hold that burden, I'll say, of making sure that the steps are being followed. Their name's attached to it. It's their license attached to that report. So if they're reporting out that repairs need to happen within 90 days and they don't, the inspector needs to go back to the city so that they're informing them, the client's not following the steps. Or after those repairs are done within the 90 days, the inspector has to come back out and inspect again and refile a new report. So there's a lot more emphasis and responsibility on the inspector versus the owner in this point, which the city, I believe, is trying to do that too. Unlike the state where they were pushing everything on the owner, go figure it out, here you go, the city's trying to do the education piece like we talked about to prepare people a little bit more. And please, as I'm going through, stop me, raise your hand, because I know there's a lot of information I'm going to go through, and if we're talking about the law now, 20 slides later, you might not remember. So who's affected by the law? Everybody. Occupiers, operators, managers, owners. This is going to affect everybody in some way because these inspections have to happen. And you might say, well, the occupiers, how are they being affected? They're being affected probably the most positively out of everybody because this is ensuring safe structures for people going in. It's making, as Jim was mentioning yesterday, it makes your garage look a lot nicer, more appearance. We were talking about, I think Kendra and I were talking about, man, you spend $1 million on concrete repair. Nobody's going to notice that. They don't want to do it. They'd rather spend the $20,000 on painting. But that $1 million has to happen on the concrete before you can paint it. You can't just put the lipstick on the pig, is what we always say. So when and where. So this is the when and where, what we were talking about, when you have to have your inspection done. I'll only talk about the Cycle A, the first one. So Cycle A technically started this year, January 1st, but the city is really using 2022 as an educational period. So by 2023, everybody within the Manhattan Community Districts 1 through 7 has to have that report filed. If not, they're subject to daily fines and eventually closure of their garage by the city. Anybody can have just like the inspection law for the state, you can have your inspection done at any point, and that's when your cycle then begins. But not many people want to go out and look for problems before they have to look for those problems. So here's the cycles where everything falls, and then from there, it's a 3-year inspection cycle after that. Why? We talked about this a lot. Why? I think the very first sentence there is the most important thing. It holds owners accountable to provide a safe parking environment. Again, we're seeing collapses. The city didn't want to have more inspectors to have to manage, more codes to enforce. It's not something that they are going to look to make revenue off of. They want to avoid things like this. And this is really the biggest need and the why behind an inspection law such as this. So this is an animation, and I don't know if it's going to go through. There we go, it's going to go through. So why? We talked about why the inspection needs to happen from a safety perspective, but really why do we need to inspect what's going on? This is a little animation of just a simple water infiltrating concrete, cracks forming because of the rust building up on the reinforcement within the concrete, and then eventually a spall of concrete. That spall of concrete is then when it becomes that safety issue for the people in the garage. That can fall on them, it can fall on cars, We do, when we do our inspections, we also like to do hazard mitigation when we're doing it. So basically our engineers are just going through and knocking down loose concrete. It doesn't look pretty, but it's better than falling on the doctor's BMW that it's parked in or somebody's head that's walking by. So different things like that. Again, familiar images. Hopefully they're not in your garage, but they probably are. And it's funny, I was going through this presentation with my wife and she said, did somebody get murdered? Why is there blood all over this garage? And I said, people think that, or they think it's paint and they let it go. And even people that work in parking garages, they might not know why is this red coming through? And that's the rust that's bleeding through. That's showing that picture before of that spall, it's eventually gonna happen and you're gonna get that piece of concrete. That concrete there was about a 2 foot by 2 foot piece that fell on the hood of a car. So again, seeing things like this, they look not great, but they don't really look that scary until they get to here. So just like the structural reinforcement within the garages and the concrete, there's also other things that are being looked at and identified throughout this inspection, such as waterproofing systems, which ultimately are the things that are keeping the water from getting into the concrete, your sealants, your coatings, your sealers, all those things to prevent that happening, getting that rust buildup, those spalls. So this is just as important in the inspection process because we want to ensure that this prevention mode is in place and it's there for safety before we're getting to those more serious conditions. Yes?
So let's say you have a garage structure mid-life. What would you predict to be the cost of adding water per space?
So it depends what the construction type is and what method. So we have, at StructureCare, we've been using, and we've actually been working with Doug on using a newer product that's a penetrating sealer. So we've all seen the traffic coating that's on top, looks gray, rubbery material. It's a great system, but it can be very expensive to maintain. A system like that typically is about 10 to 15% of the initial install cost you can expect to spend on a yearly maintenance cost. So that might be $100,000 just on coating maintenance in one garage. We started using a sealer that penetrates the concrete now, and it goes in, it penetrates the concrete and actually pushes out any chlorides within the concrete. Very interesting. We did it on this garage here actually, and we came back the next day and it looked like it snowed because all of the chloride got pushed out of the concrete. And what it does, it actually bridges gaps that are up to a 1/16 of an inch as well, and it creates a barrier. So it's kind of like water wicking material that just lets the water's gonna sit on top of the concrete instead of getting into it. So going back to answer your question, those sealer applications, it all depends on, again, that construction type. Everything we do at StructureCare, we get asked all the time, oh, can we have a price sheet? Or what's it gonna cost if this happens? And like we all know, we woke up, it's 40 some degrees outside, it was 70 last week. A lot of things can happen, and we can look, and we've had it where we look at a garage one day, and we look the next day, there's so much more things that happen. This concrete just decided to spall out. So unfortunately, those systems, those waterproofing systems are so customized per location, where they're at in the garage, what construction type. I would be lying if I tried to give you an approximate of that, unfortunately. So any other questions on this? No? Okay. Again, just some familiar images. Here we have the traffic coating as we were talking about. One really good tip with traffic coating that I like to talk about with garage owners, people with parking lots, we've seen it put down everywhere, walkways, pedestrian walkways. Never cover joints, because that joint is put there to allow movement within the concrete. You're now creating movement under something that has no movement on top. You're gonna get those cracks. And the bad thing with the coating, if maintenance isn't kept up, this right here, there's maybe nothing going on, but you could get water that's 20 feet away sitting under that, eating under that concrete, and you would have no idea because it only failed on the joint because of the movement. But that fail allowed water to now get underneath. So one important thing I always like to talk, traffic coatings, they're great. We use them a lot in the right application, but never cover a joint with traffic coating. So again, structural steel within the concrete, the waterproofing. There's other steel elements within a garage, such as staircases, the connection hardwares, your cable barriers. All these systems were never made to last as long as that garage. So those things have to be maintained on a more regular basis than maybe all of the sealants in the garage because of rust and things like that. And people don't realize, we talk about mobility, we talk about safety, signage, people leading people to the stairs. People want to use stairs. They're not going to use them if they look like this. Again, images that we've all probably seen or maybe even have, and it's important to do the maintenance on items like this, just like it is on waterproofing and the actual structural steel within the concrete. So, we talked about structural steel, we talked about waterproofing, we talked about the other items within a garage like staircases. Aside from that, within the inspection, these inspectors are also, in the New York law inspection, they're looking at things such as improper winter maintenance, because things like that can lead to failures as well. Something that we see all the time, and any engineer, any contractor in here has seen it, or owners. This is plow damage. That's all that is plow damage. And that joint, which those joints are very expensive to replace, needs to be completely replaced now. That was a joint that we had installed 4 years ago. That was last year. So 3 years. That should have at least 10 to 12. And then ultimately what we see, again, doing these inspections, if we're doing them in the winter, we're looking at, are they piling up snow? Are they throwing it off the side? Are they doing it properly? Because ultimately, this, as Jim was talking about yesterday too, with different loads when the garages are getting built, you can stack snow, but how high? How compressed? When they're stacking snow, they're just not stacking it and you can jump in. It's nice, it's hard, compacted ice, it's snow, and ultimately, we see here a failure. Again, all of these things are being looked at during this inspection that people might have not thought, okay, we need to care about our stairs, we need to care about the hardware for our barrier cables, we need to care about how high we pile our snow, but these are all things that can lead to failures, and again, why this law is really needed. So, benefits of the law. It really encourages, again, the owners to try to have a safe structure, but not only does it do that, it makes them start to think about their garage and actually care about their garage that they might not have done before. Again, Jim yesterday, he was talking about it, and it was a great fact of trying to convince owners to $100 to $125, $200 per parking space just to put that away in maintenance. That's something that we really focus on with owners is we understand there's millions of dollars that need to get done. They all don't need to happen right now, but something needs to happen right now. And it's just like your car, changing the tires, changing the oil is gonna allow your car to run longer. Doing things like this and preventative maintenance and thinking about programs like that allows your garage to operate longer with less downtime because less repairs. So, how to get started? As we talked about, that is our QPSI, so Qualified Parking Structure Inspector. I knew it was coming up sooner or later. So this is Stephen Jeter. He lives in Bronx. He did not want to have to make the trip up here to Buffalo with me, so I let him pass. But he is, I think he was number 6 or 7 on the QPSI list. High Concrete, our parent company, actually was consulted by New York State and New York City. Our parent company builds parking garages. On this law, how to make it fair, what things, the different items to make sure that they weren't looking from it from only compliance, but also from an owner's side. So first, you need to understand your parking structure cycle. Again, not many people are gonna wanna do, if their inspection isn't due until 2026, they might not wanna open up a can of worms in 2022 when we're all talking about is there a recession coming and things like that, so we'll wait. So finding out when your parking structure needs to be inspected. Next is really understanding what happens once that inspection happens. Because you might think your garage is in good shape, but an engineer could come back and say, you have to immediately do $100,000 worth of repairs because I can't say this is safe and put my license on the line. So people really need to understand that is a big difference between the state and the city law, is that action could happen very quickly And if not, I don't quote me on this, but it's at least $10,000 a day, every day past your inspection date, ultimately leading in them taking their occupancy permit away until it's done. And then lastly, obviously engage with a qualified parking structure inspector. On the New York City Department of Building website, there's a full list of all the inspectors, all the companies. Again, the inspectors do not work for the cities. They work for StructureCare. They work for other engineers, things like that. But they have to go through the interview process with the city, be approved by the city, have a license through the city, all of that things to hold them accountable. So again, how we can help. I'm not gonna, again, I've talked about kind of who StructureCare is, things like that. Steven lives in the city. This law is something that we wish every state had, because then it forces people to care about their garages, because we recommend to our clients inspect on a 3-year basis. The law is on a 3-year basis. The law makes people take action, makes them put money into their garages if needed. And that really goes with our comprehensive program, because we're more of a turnkey operation, meaning that we have licensed PEs, but we also have our own project managers and vendors. And we do everything from engineering to repairs to maintenance. So this law coming around, a lot of people are up in arms, but eventually it will help them with their budgets. It will help them have that safer property, things like that. And we're just here to help along the way. So we talked about the law, what they're looking for, why it's needed. Now a little bit about how it really affects the garage owner. And again, it comes down to, I think, money and budgets and how they manage that asset. And here, this is not a StructureCare chart. It is in the industry forever, but it is a very simple, great chart that shows you my garage. We bought it up, we purchased it. It's big, it's concrete, it's steel. It's gonna last 75 years if I don't touch it in Buffalo. We see that that's not the case. And then down here, you have those deferred and reactionary repairs. Yeah, you're gonna get a little bit more out of that life, but this time in between, you probably have downtime. You might be down half your spaces, so what's really the point at that point? With StructureCare and the New York City law, it makes you start to look at that more predictive approach to try to understand your garage, understand what's going on, maybe not take care of things today, but you can plan for them tomorrow. And that's the biggest thing, is planning, because again, we understand nobody has $4 million to put in their garage tomorrow, or maybe they do, and good for them, but most garage owners don't, so they need to understand, okay, I need to plan for 2 years to get to that $4 million. How do I plan? I need to do things in between. I need to take small steps so that $4 million doesn't grow to $6 million. So all those different things, this inspection cycle really helps with that and really pushes a lot of the things that we at StructureCare talk about, of that predictive versus reactionary. So service life, so there's 3 different types of repairs that can be done in a garage. Service life replacement, preventative maintenance items, and a true repair. We firmly believe if you do preventative maintenance and do the service life replacement, so like sealants, the stairs, the things in the garage that were never meant to last as long as the garage, you do those too, you should never have a repair that you don't know about. And that is a very true statement, because of building the garages, we've been on service agreements with people for 20, 25 years now, and they have never had a repair that they didn't know about because of that preventative mindset from day one. Just really kind of hammering home again the difference of cost, predictive maintenance versus reactionary repairs. These numbers, are they right now? They were right when we did it, but our labor and material costs have probably gone up 10 times since I started right now. So, but it really does show the difference versus what you're spending per space, especially, and not even accounting whatever that loss of revenue is. We can't account for that because they don't charge, or now they're charging $10 a space, or they're charging $10 an hour. A lot of our clients that we work with, this is how they bring in a lot of their money and revenue. So if we can cut down their downtime, it really helps them out to plan and to build up those funds to then take care of those repairs, because they said, well, I can't do repairs because I have no money, because my garage is always closed, and it's just that bad cycle, and it's just more and more closed spots, more and more temp shoring, until finally, as Jim was talking about, they did a case study. Do we tear it down, or do we spend a lot of money on this garage? And we see that all the time. We do those case studies a lot. We go out and do validation reports for our customers when they're buying a garage that they're, yeah, I don't know if I want to buy this garage. Well, what do you want to do? We just want to buy it for the lot. Yeah, but you're going to spend $2-3 million to knock it down. Then you're going to spend millions of dollars to build a new one. Why not just put that $3-4 million to revitalize this garage? And that's really trying to get that predictive mindset with people, and we're hoping that this law forces them to have that. Again, really just hammering home again that predictive maintenance strategy of why it benefits. I think the biggest thing, maximize the service life. Yes, we deal with clients a lot that do sell garages 3 to 5 years, so they don't care about maximizing that service life. They want to take care of it for 3 to 5 years. But I think most people in this room who do own garages, they're going to try to suck every last bit out of that garage that they can, because they don't want to go through a process of demo and constructing a new one. So that is everything I have for today. Any questions on the New York City law, the requirements, anything around it, preventative maintenance, StructureCare, anything I can answer at all?
So we started this in Manhattan last
Yep.
year. Earlier this year, I guess, right? So, and we had people walking around. We contracted with O&S, and they were walking every single garage.
Mm-hmm.
Any concrete structure, at some point, you're going to look, and you'll take out a broom, and concrete's going to crumble or fall.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of those has been in here. So do you feel that they've gone like super safe, where they're making, like they're saying this qualifies as a critical issue when it's really not, and they're gonna, I get what you're saying, it's like they're all for it, right? But
Right.
they're almost to the point where, and we have to shut it down, like just make recommendations, because you're gonna shut down every single garage I own, because like, you know, I take a broom and
Right.
some concrete falls.
Right.
Which is not necessarily a critical issue, but
Right.
they're leaning towards it being critical. Do you feel that when it gets to the, you know, those real assessments are going to be, I don't want to say too strict because it's a serious issue, but
Right.
maybe digging things that aren't necessarily critical?
No, that's a great question, and something that a lot of our clients are asking, people are asking. So during the interview process for the QPSI, and that they go through, and the city in their mind has what is critical, what is not critical, and really that's during that interview process, because you can fail. We know partners from other companies, nobody from ours, that they did not make it through that because, to your point, they were either too critical or not critical enough. So it ultimately comes down to the city's discretion, because they're trying to make it as safe as possible. I know that's not always the best thing, but what we really recommend is don't just go out and bargain shop for when it comes to your garage, when it comes to inspections. Go find that right partner. If you're working with somebody, talk to them. Do they have a QPSI, or do they recommend somebody? Because the engineer is hired by you. They're not hired by the city. They're required to do a standard thing, but they're not going to, I mean, we're all in business. They want to make that relationship. They want to be able to come back and now do the repairs or do the inspection the next 3 years for the next 30 years. But to answer your question, there is that NYC minimum guidance of what's critical and what's not. And it's to the point, it's not hitting it, a little concrete falls down, okay, that's just hazard mitigation, that's okay. But if you hit it and a 4-foot piece falls, right, no, exactly, and I am not, because I thankfully didn't have to go through the QPSI, I'm not an engineer, but that is all the things that happen in that interview process that did not happen in the state. In the state, it came out, inspect your garages by a licensed PE, submit a report. Okay. That's really the main difference that we're hoping forces people to take it seriously, so that they're not scrambling at the last minute, and maybe they just get the run-of-the-mill engineer that just wanted to put his name on there, and you're getting that super critical guy. You want to find the right partner, and that's why they're really trying to spend 2022 to allow that education time, so that in 2023 you can do the inspection, and it also gives you time that if you have to do an inspection, it also gives you time to do that repair as well.
Yeah, I mean, these were Manhattan garages, so obviously that's for sure. But we were suspect on how strict we were getting on the reports. It was a major concern that we
Yeah.
were looking at some bills that didn't make sense.
So I would say that the standard for what is safe and not safe didn't really stray very far away from our reports when we do them at StructureCare, because we didn't really change around what our reporting out looks like, because it pretty much matched what the city was asking. So to that point, if you go and talk to any of the many engineer firms that are here or that you've worked with, I think that's your better way to go than going to the city to understand it. Try to engage with a partner, and if you're not, the city's there for the information, but again, the city is not going to be your advocate versus your contractor that you're wanting to bring on site. So, great question though. Any other questions? No? Okay. I know, again, this is New York City, and it does not always pertain to everybody in the room, but we did want to give this presentation because, again, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, I would be very surprised in every large metropolitan city if they don't have something like this. Even before this, Philadelphia and New York City, they had facade inspection of falling concrete. A facade falling or the facade on a garage, what's the difference? It's the same thing. So other states are really looking at this, and New York State is now looking to amend their original one to try to mimic the city more so that people actually care about the law. So, no? Then? All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate the time, and I'm happy that we can get out of here a little bit earlier and beat the weather, hopefully. So, but my information's up there. I'll be here for a little bit. If you guys have any questions, again, about this law, preventative maintenance, things like that, we're able to do the New York inspection with our QPSI inspector, Stephen, or we just have education material on it as well. I've done this presentation 3 or 4 times now for just different organizations that had no idea that this law was out there, because it was a email blast they got or another letter of 10 from the city that they had sitting on their desk. So, but thank you, everybody.